Good morning and welcome to this Monday Minute. I want to read a portion from one of my favorite chapters in the Bible, James chapter 1. When I was in junior high, I memorized the whole chapter, but don't ask me to quote it today. I'd mess up quite a bit. But I want to begin in verse 2. My brothers, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations, knowing that the trying of your faith develops patience. But let patience perfect its work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives it to all men liberally and without criticism, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith, without wavering. For he who wavers is like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed with the wind. Let not that man think that he will receive anything from the Lord. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. These few verses are about faith and how faith operates in our lives. Number one, count it all joy when you fall into various temptations or trials, another word for temptations. That's not a natural tendency. The natural tendency is to complain, get depressed, gripe. But God tells us to count it all joy, because when you're a child of God, we know Romans 8:28 kicks in. All things work together for our good. And what God is doing is perfecting the image of Christ in our lives when we go through trials. Our faith is perfected in the midst of a trial. We grow closer to God if we handle the trial correctly. If we count it all joy, we allow God to work in us and form us, and we draw closer to God. I love this connection here that it makes here. Knowing that the trying of your faith develops patience. You can really tell a person's faith by how patient they are. Impatient people typically have less faith because they're trying to do it themselves. They've got to get it done. I lean that way. But someone who has patience is trusting in the Lord. And that doesn't mean they don't work. It doesn't mean that they don't do things, but their trust is in the Lord to get it done. And so really those two words tie together very well. Without patience, you probably don't have a strong faith. But let patience perfect its work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. That's talking about being formed into the image of Christ. And then I love it how if it goes into wisdom, and if you lack wisdom, ask of God. We need wisdom in this world, choices. We don't know all the information sometimes, or we have information, but we need God's wisdom and the right choices to make, the right things to do in our life. And God promises to give that to us. And it says, when you ask for wisdom, don't waver. If you waver, you're like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. And what that means is that if you are double-minded, that means you are trusting in yourself and not trusting in God, or you're trusting God part of the time, but then when God doesn't show up and you become impatient, then you switch and do it yourself. And that's really what it's talking about in context, that if you're going to trust in God, trust in God. If you ask for wisdom for something, let God give you the wisdom. Don't just go out on your own and do it. So, and it kind of gives a conclusion here. Let not that man think he will receive anything from the Lord. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. We can't be lukewarm in our Christianity. We have to be sold out to God in our faith. And that is illustrated by how patient we are and how much we rely upon God for wisdom in our life. That's the Monday Minute. You have a great week. God bless.